Hi, welcome to Microservices Lab. In this lecture, we are going to execute our first query. So let us get started. In the previous lecture, we have created a GraphQL schema file, a few data fetchers, and we had also defined a GraphQL bean in the GraphQL application class. And in this lecture, we will execute our query. There is still one problem in our project, and that is we have only created the books table, but we haven't inserted any data into it. And without that, we will not be fetching any kind of stuff with the help of our queries. So the first step is to create a new SQL file that will insert the data into our books table. So let us create it. We will create that file in the src/main/resources directory. So right click, new file. I will name it as data.sql. Insert into books, name and pages. As the ID is auto incremented, we won't be specifying it over here. Name of the book, my first book, and pages, let us say 100. We will insert 2 rows, my second book and pages 200. The next step is to execute this SQL file when the application is started. So we again have to use the database initializer or connection factory initializer. Go to the GraphQL application file. We already created a class path resource for the schema.sql file, and we will be doing same for our data.sql file. So let us copy this and again paste it over here and rename this to data.sql. As this constructor takes a variable number of arguments of type resources, so this will work for us. With this, now we are ready to execute our query. So let us move to the Altair. I have already opened the Altair over here. After opening, you will see something similar to this. So the next step is to fetch the schema from the backend, and in order to do so, we have to start the server first. So let us get back to the Spring Tool suite and start the server. So right click on the project, run as Spring Boot application. As you can see, our application is started. Now let us move to the Altair again. We have to specify the URL of the GraphQL controller, and that was http localhost:8080. I am using the port 8080, but if you have customized it, you have to specify that port over here, and then /GraphQL. Let us click on the reload docs, and you will see something like this. And now let us click on the docs, and we have query link over here. Click on this, and you can see that the queries we have defined in our GraphQL schema file are fetched into the Altair. So this is quite helpful when you don't have access to the schema file, and you can fetch it using the introspection provided by Altair. So we have two queries: get book, that takes an argument ID of type int and returns a book, and getBooks that returns a list of books. And book itself is a type that has three fields: ID of type int, name of type string, and pages of type int. So let us try to execute our first query. In order to execute a query, we have to start with the curly braces first, and we have to write the name of the query. So I will first execute the getBooks query. So let us type getBooks, and you can see that Altair automatically suggested us the queries that we can use, and I will use the getBooks. So I will click on this. As this query doesn't take any argument, so we don't have to specify anything. But this query returns a list of books, and book is a object type and it has fields. So we have to specify which fields are we going to fetch. And in order to specify that, we again have to use the curly braces, and then we have to type the fields we are trying to fetch data for. I will use ID, name of the book, and pages in the book. After specifying this query, now let us run this query. Click on the run query button, and you can see that all the books we have inserted into the table are listed over here. So there are two books in the table, a book with ID 1 that has named my first book, pages 100, and similarly a book, my second book, with the ID 2 and with the pages 200. Now let us execute the getBook query. To execute the getBook query, we have to use the getBook query name over here, and this takes an argument, so we have to use parenthesis, and we have to specify the name of the argument as it is ID, and we have to provide the value for this argument or placeholder. So to specify a value, we first have to separate it with the help of a colon, and then we have to pass the ID of the book. I want to fetch my first book. It has ID 1, so I will specify the ID 1 over here. And again, this will return us a book which has several fields, and we have to specify the fields we want the data for. I will again fetch the ID, name, and the pages. Now let us run this query and see the results. As you can see, only the book which has the ID 1 is returned, with all fields mentioned in the query. From this, we can only return those fields that we want. In order to do that, we have to specify only the required fields. Suppose I only want the name field, then I will specify the name over here and will run the query. As you can see in response, I only get the name field. Similarly, if I again specify the pages field as well and run the query, I will get the name of the book and the pages in the book. So this is how GraphQL works, and this is why GraphQL is pretty much effective and efficient, as it returns only the required data. So that's all for this video. We have executed our first query. I hope you will get something from this lecture. Please share and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.